Tonight, 11 Alive has confirmed rapper Lil Baby is named in arrest warrants in the shooting deaths of 13-year-olds Lamont Freeman and Jacody Davis. The shooting happened last summer in the Oakland City West End apartments on Peoples Street. Police described it as gang violence escalated by a Lil Baby music video shoot. Investigators say members of the Goodfellas gang orchestrated the attack from behind bars.
Okay, so we've all heard the confusion about Lil Baby getting so-called implicated in the homicides of an 11 and 13-year-old, and that's kind of not true. The police, pretty inappropriate them throwing his name in it the way they did, especially coming on the heels of the disastrous YSL indictment. But what's really happening is it's pretty interesting. And I'm sure it wasn't an accident. They put his name out there. They got something in the works. Now, is it a RICO against 4PF? I think if the Atlanta prosecutor's office hits any more rapper gang RICOs where they know they're going to have to go up against big lawyers, they'll do a much better job, and they're going to be much more careful. The YFN indictment didn't work very well. But with YFN and YSL off the streets for all that time, could be a coincidence, but violence did go down quite a bit in Atlanta during that time. And given the amount of violent crimes the prosecutor alleged them to be involved in, those two groups alone impacted the crime rate. Now, what's going on with Lil Baby? So in June 29th of 2024, a guy that was a part of a group of one of these, there's this big gang, like this super gang called the Goodfellas or the Mob. You'll hear people say if you're down with the mob in a lot of Atlanta stuff. That's the Goodfellas, that's the mob.
It's the mob, bitch.
There are lots of different, it seems like it's sort of like being folks or something where, you could be whatever. I don't know who is in the folks, the Mickey Cobras and the GDs and the Spanish Disciples and whoever. There's a lot of different gangs that are part of the mob, the Goodfellas. And on June 29th, 2024, one of their guys was killed by supposedly some 4PF people. And then, 4 days later on July 2nd, Lil Baby had a video shoot in, something Hills, whatever neighborhood. He had a video shoot in an apartment complex. And later that night, the OTM people, that's the OTM, OMF, only my family, is the subgroup or the gang that's a part of the bigger mob, the Goodfellas. So the OMF showed back up at this apartment complex where Lil Baby had to shoot his video shoot 3 days after 4PF members supposedly unalived an OMF member. And then OMF showed up later that night and just hopped out and started shooting up the apartment complex. For those that haven't been to Atlanta, that's really how Atlanta's bad neighborhoods. Well, you got the old inner rung neighborhoods like on the west side and the east, like nearer to downtown, that have houses and stuff. But all down in the south side, where there's a lot of action, Jonesboro, all that. A lot of apartment complexes, and they're not projects, but there's a lot of them are very Atlanta's physical geography, a lot of winding streets. It seems like you could really be back off in the cut, and it's hard for the police to even get there. But anyways, so there was one of these apartment complexes, the OMF guys popped out, shot it up. This 11 and 13-year-old got killed, and this is the Atlanta police saying, Lil Baby is to blame. Of course, he's not charged with anything. How could he be? He knew better than to have a video shoot there. Well, that's quite a thing for the police to say. That's basically them admitting we don't have control of the streets. right? I mean, a person should be able to shoot a music video. You're saying you know that there's a gang war that you're not controlling. Now, what's going to go on with 4PF? Hard to say. But what's more interesting is these OMF and the group they're under. And 7 people just got charged with the shooting of that kid.
The overall theme of this case is grown men playing gangster that left 2 of our children in graves and a community in fear. And cowardly acts of an Atlanta-based rapper that decided to go over into a rival gang stronghold and shoot a music video in a place that he knew he should not have been.
And they've been giving this misleading clickbait headlines in the news. Arrest warrant confirms Atlanta rapper Lil Baby's connection to boys' murders. So even the mainstream news is using clickbait because Lil Baby doesn't have an arrest warrant. There's an arrest warrant. They got these 7 guys they've arrested, and they mention Lil Baby as he should have known better than to shoot a music video in Dixie Hills, which led to the retaliatory shooting later that night. So 12:34 a.m. July 2nd at the Sparks apartment on Spark Street, Southwest Atlanta. These kids had just left a birthday party when they got ambushed. Multiple shell casing at the crime scene. 5.56 millimeters, 7.62s, and 2.23s. Victim struck multiple times. So they shot these little kids pretty bad. Authorities say 2 of the criminal street gangs in Atlanta, 4 Pockets Full and Only My Family, are known to have historical conflict. So it started in August 2021 when a 4PF kid, he looks like a little boy. This looks like his high school photo. Big Mark Holland. You realize how young these guys are. It's sad. He was unalived, and a 4PF held OMF, Only My Family, responsible. Supposedly on June 29th, they got their get back, and then probably to rub it in on July 1st or the night of July 2nd, they shot the music video at the Sparks Apartments, and then OMF came for their revenge. OMF is a subset of the Goodfellas criminal street gang, which dates all the way from the early 2000s. It's also called the Mob, La Familia, La Cosa Nostra, and it started at the Rice Street Jail. So once again, we're seeing this all over the country of jail systems that are out of control. They can't, you get taken into custody by the state, but then the state can't even protect you while you're in custody. So these gang ties form in jail. We see it all over the country, from the rise of the Latin Kings and the Bloods in New York to, of course, the MA and Aryan Brotherhood and all this stuff out of California that we hear about. And it's true all over the country. And here's another example in Atlanta where this super gang that started as something called 30 Deep. And 30 Deep was catching cases, but 30 Deep either turned into the Goodfellas gang or just one of the subgroups of it that got tied together Rice Street. But these guys are really serious because in November of 2024, they just caught an indictment where they were putting tracking devices on the vehicles of guards at the jail, at least, I think at the Rice Street Jail or the Fulton County Jail and maybe somewhere else. And some people agreed to do hits on these guards for $1,000. And one of the guards involved, or one of the indictees, is a guard that was involved with these guys. And so this mob thing is serious. A lot of Atlanta guys, if you listen to enough of the music, they reference the mob. And back in 2017, Baby had that big song, Pull Up With a Stick. where he was singing. It get, I think there's 180 million views. Big hit song, Sigh Baby. Well, that was one of those almost like a perfect marketing storm, like Tekashi 6ix9ine with the Gummo song, where Sigh Baby was singing very melodically, and it was a good song, but he's out in this apartment complex in this neighborhood called the Nine, which is a mob stronghold, the ninth ward, part of Zone 3. This is the famous case where it made it on First 4. So there was a case on First 48, and someone was killed in the same apartment complex on Dunham Road or something. Long story short, the homicide detective started looking at the music video that Sigh Baby did, and they zoomed in on serial numbers of guns, and there was over 24 arrests. 2 life sentences came out of people identified in that music video. Sigh Baby kind of got the blame in the streets, but it wasn't his fault. There was a girl that was in the video, actually, that a girl with, like a light-skinned girl with like blonde dreadlocks, and she ended up being the one who told it and turned into murderer. The murder case in question was a real petty thing of someone was selling a TV and brought it over to those wild apartment complexes and got killed and got his TV taken. And that was the murder case. And that got a lot of the mob people put in jail. But they had already had, they had a case back in 2013 at that same apartment complex. So after the Sigh Baby case in 2017, 2018, the city ordered those 28 buildings back there to be torn down. It had been called the Nine, and it was an infamous drug things. I saw on someone said somewhere that some of them guys were making so much money, and at one point they owed the cartel, and like the cartel ran up in there and confiscated like $1 million of unpaid ticket money. You know, is that true or not? I don't know, but it sounds like it might have been. So back in 2013 at the Nine and Delmar Lane, okay, that's where it's at, Delmar Lane, there was, the Goodfellas gang was already strong in prison, and 2 of the members got out, some guys named Dunlap and Wise, and they had some sort of problem with the leader that was still in jail. And one of the shooters was a guy named Giorgio Glover. Long story short, he's on 3-way call with the leader of the Goodfellas, the mob in prison. He's telling them to shoot these guys, Dunlap and Wise, who had just got out. He does. Dunlap dies. Wise lives. And this girl, Talia, well, at least that's the story that was told to the police by Talia Knox, one of the so-called shooter, Giorgio Glover, or the so-called shooter, Giorgio Glover's girlfriend. Well, he got convicted, but then it was quickly overturned because Talia Knox was an informant. She was a paid informant. So in the beginning, listen to this, she got 2 $60 payments to give information about her so-called boyfriend. And eventually she was able to get moving expenses and the down payment for an apartment from the prosecutor's office. But it started off with 2 $60 payments. So you can find yourself looking at a life sentence over a handful of $20 bills. How would you like that? So the murder that preceded the July 29th murders was a guy named OMF Trevante Turner, or an OMF member named Trevante Turner at 9 Peyton Place in southwest Atlanta. Following Turner's death, his cousin and gang leader, Keontae Midnight Sanders, currently incarcerated, reportedly coordinated revenge against 4 PF members through a series of phone calls. Investigators uncovered extensive communication between Sanders and several OMF affiliates, including Ali Lee Caldwell, Traydon Crawford, and Reginald Yano Thomas, and they talked about plans to get back at the person they thought was responsible. and they were targeting a guy named J-Shot, 4PF J-Shot, who's known to be in the Spark Street area, and he's the one who was going to pay the cost for them shooting the video there, but of course they got those two little kids. J-Shot is very close to Lil Baby, whom police refer to as the 4PF gang's leader in their warrant. So there's no warrant for Lil Baby, but in writing up the context of these homicides of these two children, these two little boys, they're saying it's two rival gangs, and the gang that was on the victimized side, well, who they were going after, it was the two little boys who got victimized, was Four Pockets Full, led by Lil Baby. So that's not good for him. If you didn't know, he changed the name of his record label last year to Glass Window or something. So he's no longer 4PF Records. Investigators intercepted phone conversations between OMF gang members, including Richard R.J. Hollis, a known OMF associate, was overheard instructing associates to destroy evidence, including shoes and delete social media accounts. So the interplay of social media and the police, you would think, well, guys wouldn't even be on social media, but that's how you conduct your drug. People sell drugs on Instagram. Like, I mean, everybody knows, like, you can go on there and find drugs for sale, like, for real, like, and buy weight of all kind of stuff. That's how you intimidate rival groups. That's how you establish territory. Social media, they're not going to stop using social media to beef on, gang bang, whatever you want to call it, because it's useful. Now, it also provides evidence, but there's always evidence to crimes. Now, this guy, Sanders, the incarcerated OMF slash Goodfellas member, he was planning on trying to extort Lil Baby for $5 million when he gets out of prison. Probably for the murder of his cousin that was also on OMF. And the 30 Deep gang itself has been slammed.
Is 30 Deep a gang?
Huh?
Is 30 Deep a gang?
Is it a gang?
Yes, sir.
And what you define as a gang?
How do you define a gang?
Back in 2019, Atlanta has a huge problem with cars being broken into and guns being stolen. So a group of young 9-Trey gangster bloods and some Goodfellas, I guess the 30 Deep branch of the Goodfellas, went out into some suburban county between June 29th and July 1st of 2019 and went on some huge car breaking in rampage. And it was so bad, breaking in cars, they broke in so many cars, they brought a RICO just for that. And a bunch of these guys got 20-year terms, first 10 years to be served in prison. So they got more time than anyone, I think, in a YSL case. So there's a bunch of these Goodfella guys in prison. I did read somewhere once that at one point they had a lot of power in prison. I think they still do. And I think they're being cemented in as this, like, kind of the mob, like this super gang that, you know, you're in your own gang, but you're also down with the mob, and it helps you in prison. And the Georgia Department of Corrections and the county jails there in downtown Atlanta are in really abominable conditions. I did several stories on it. The federal government released a very damning report on what goes on in there. You should check out my story on that. But people being tied to their beds and deprived of food for months by other inmates. This isn't by guards, because there's not enough guards, because the staffing in the Georgia state prison system is only 30% of what it's supposed to be. So I think that they put Lil Baby, 4PF, they put it in the indictment to sort of get public interest. They sure do like getting attention down there in the Atlanta prosecutor's office. I don't necessarily think that, well, judging from this, that there's an impending RICO against Lil Baby and 4PF, but could be other evidence. They're certainly gonna tread a lot more carefully because they are obviously very embarrassed by what went on. Now, one different wrinkle with YSL, but one different wrinkle in this is that it's the feds who indicted the Goodfellas back in November of 2024 for the racketeering, which included the putting of the tracking devices on the jail guards and planning to hit jail guards because they had been interfering with their contraband business in the jails and I think in one prison. So there's been a bunch of these indictments across Georgia of inmates along with guards running very lucrative drug rackets that always are including murders. So the feds, at some point, they're going to make what's going on in Georgia's criminal justice system, they're probably planning on doing it now, a real big priority, because if prisons are totally compromised, well, then you have no way to scare people on the street if they're just going to go into a jail that their gang controls and where they can get all the drugs they want and they can sell drugs and make money. So the feds are involved in this, unlike the last round of things. The rivals to 4PF just got a federal indictment, the Goodfellas gang, and 7 more of them were indicted by the state for the murder of these 2 kids. They threw Lil Baby's name in it to get more attention. Does that mean he's impending doom for him? Not necessarily, but I think we're going to see more of this story. There's a reason Lil Baby changed the name of his record label. Al Prophet, American Dope, ATL, shouty.